Thank you so much for joining me in our 2025 Halloween class. My name is Kristen Grunder from Grunderfully Delicious, and we're at the Cookie Studio OC. And I just want to give you a little rundown of the class. So you guys should have this kit here. Take it out of the freezer. It takes about 15 minutes to defrost. I also want to make sure you have a pair of scissors and a paper towel ready for you. I'm going to go ahead and go through what is in your kit. So if you look inside of your kit, you will have your already prepared icing. So I'm just going to set that aside. You're going to have this little container of edible bats that we'll be using in our details. You're going to take out all of your cookies. And then inside the bottom is a little baggie of some things that you need. So we're going to open that up together. We've got some extra piping bags right in the back here. Now, the important thing about this is we do need one piping bag for sure at the end. So make sure you have one for the end. Don't be cutting those holes too big. We've got our practice sheet, which I'm going to set right in front of me. That's what we're going to do first. A second practice sheet that we will do later, so I'm going to set that aside. I like to have the picture of the class in front of me as reference. We have a wooden scribe tool that we'll use to smooth out our cookies, an edible marker, and lastly, a piping tip. Okay, this is what we're going to need that extra bag for. So go ahead and take all of that out, take your icing out, and I'll meet you back. When you take your icing bags out, I want you to give your pods a bit of a massage, okay, just like this. With our orange and our white icing, that one needs a really, really good massage because these icings are super loose. And you'll notice you'll have two whites. The white that has two little seals on it, this is for later. This is our thick icing that we're going to be using with our piping tip. So set that one aside. We will not be using, I repeat, we're not using this one until the end, the one with two little seals. So set that one aside. But we are going to practice with our yellow icing. And if you notice, there's a lot of this plastic here. I actually like to cut that off. And if you decide to do that, go ahead and don't cut too close to the tape, but leave about 2 inches from the tape. Real quick, I just want to mention how the class runs. So we are going to practice first on this practice sheet, and then I'm going to show you step by step how to outline your cookies, how to fill them in. And if you want them to look like this, I highly recommend that you watch all the steps that I show you on the screen. If you've taken my classes before and you don't feel like you need to practice, that's totally fine. You can either skip through this, fast forward, or yeah, but just so you know, we are practicing with our yellow icing. So here we go. So make sure you massage that bag really well. The way that I like to cut my hole, now it's really important here with these holes because you only have technically 2 extra bags if you need to rebag your icing if you cut your hole too big. So if you look at your yellow bag, there's a seam here. I like to have that seam facing up toward the ceiling, and then I flatten the tip with my finger, and I'm going to cut the teeniest, tiniest hole straight across. Now, if you have not taken this class before, hold off on cutting your bag until I show you this first part. But anytime that I cut a hole out of my bag, I always squeeze some icing onto my paper towel just to get that air out. Also, it is helpful to have a damp paper towel because royal icing tends to get kind of crusty. So if you have a chance, go ahead and give that a little bit of a spray. But I'm going to go ahead and massage my bag. Also, I forgot to mention, if you have like a table fan at your house, that would be great to kind of speed things along. My goal when I am doing this line is to get my yellow icing as thick as this black line. I don't want it much thinner because then the icing will start to curl, and if it's too thick, the icing will come out too fast. So we'll see how I did, but I'm going to hold that bag by pinching the tape with my thumb and my pointer finger, and then I roll the pod so it's nice and tight. I rest that pod in my hand. I like to hold my wrist steady, and then I always start by touching my tip on the paper, A gentle squeeze and lifting up immediately, I'm just letting the icing fall on the line. Barely having to squeeze just enough for that line to not break, and then when I'm ready to stop, I release the pressure about an inch before the end of the line and then lay the rest down and touch. If your line's breaking, that means you're not squeezing hard enough, and if it's squiggly, either your hole is too small or you're squeezing too hard. So go ahead and just start on those lines, pause this, and then once you're done, you can do the rest of the practice sheet. I'm going to show you the rest right now, but start with your lines first. So for the waves and the swirls, I start by touching my tip like before, squeeze and lift, but this time I'm looking a little bit ahead of where I want the icing to fall, and just looking at the black line below, gently squeezing, and then when I'm ready to stop, I always release the squeeze, lay the line down, and touch. Same thing here. We're going to be doing kind of a lot of this motion of the waves and the swirls for our details today, so I want to make sure that you practice those. But again, I'm just lifting, release the pressure, lay it down. You also want to keep your tip clean, so I'm often just giving it a little swipe here and there. For the circle, you're just going to go even slower. So I touch my tip, lift like before, but this time going slower, I mean I'm slightly squeezing softer on the bag. Again, watching the icing just fall down. Squeezing just hard enough for that line to not break. Taking my time and being patient, and then when I'm ready to stop, I release the pressure and lay that down and touch. The last thing I want to show you here is for the heart. And this is probably the most important part of the class because we're doing all of our details in black, and I really want you to have that motion of putting your tip down at every point. So I have a point here or corner, I touch, I lift, gently squeezing, watching that icing fall on the black line. When I get here, I want to stop and touch, okay? And then I start where I left off and I lift up again. And we're doing this a lot with our coffin later, so I want to make sure that you're practicing that. Once you are done with your practice sheet, just fold it in half and set it aside. And then we are going to start our cookies. So finish that practice sheet first, and then we'll start our cookies. I'm super excited about this flavor today. Our featured flavor is our triple chocolate toffee sugar cookie. I hope you guys like it. It reminds me of a brownie. So delicious if you like chocolate. I'm not like a huge chocolate fan, but I like these. Alrighty, here we go. So while you were watching me demo our first cookie, I'm going to have you start massaging your orange and your teal. So get those nice and massaged. And here we go. Now this orange icing is a bit looser or thinner than what you practiced with, so the icing will come out a little bit faster. So just keep that in mind when you're cutting your hole. You want to cut a little bit smaller. When I show you here on the screen, I'm just going to show you on one pumpkin. You guys can always rewind and pause and rewind to rewatch it. But when you guys go to outline your cookies, you're going to outline both, okay? Before you fill anything in, make sure throughout the whole class that both of the cookies are outlined before filling in. So here we go. I'm going to start actually by using my edible marker. This will help me draw out some lines for where I want my outline to go. With the pumpkin, I'm going to be outlining the center section first. So I'm going to take my marker. If you look at the bottom of the pumpkin, there's just kind of like this little curve right here and two little corners. That's my guide for the lines that I'm going to be making. So I kind of just gently just drawing out. I'm not too worried about what this is going to look like. It doesn't need to be perfect because we're going to be covering this pumpkin with a bunch of mummy bandages. I can never think of what the name of that is. Every class. So you don't have to be, it doesn't need to be too crazy, but here we go. So again, with the pumpkin, the only thing I want you to remember is to start with your center section. That's where we're going to outline first. So I'm cutting a small hole, squeezing some air out onto my paper towel. I start by touching my tip right in that corner, squeeze, lift, and kind of tracing that black outline that I've made. I like to outline my cookies because it helps prevent the icing from spilling over the edge. Touch. Another good thing about outlining is you're going to see later when we fill in all of this, it's going to add dimension to our cookie. Then I'm going to take this side and I start at the bottom, and I like to go as close to the edge of the cookie as I can go. And touch. And then this side as well. Touch. And if you mess up like I just did, don't worry, you have your little wooden scribe tool, or you can use your finger if you want, but I'm just gonna take the fat end and kind of just wipe off what I don't like. But just remember, this outline does not need to be absolutely perfect. It just needs to be a closed cookie so that icing doesn't spill over the edge. After the orange is outlined, I'm gonna take my teal and outline the stem and the leaves. So I'm starting right here. So we start with the center section of the pumpkin, the two sides. Lastly is going to be the leaves and stem. And every point here, I'm touching my tip. Okay. So go ahead and outline your pumpkins, both of your pumpkins, and then meet me back here when you're done. All right, once both of your cookies are outlined, we're gonna start filling in our pumpkin. So if you notice here, I'm only gonna fill in the two sides, because if you look at the photo, there's a bit of dimension to the cookie by allowing these sides to crust. So if you have never taken a class from me before, I wanna make sure that you are watching this before you start yours. But if I tried to fill in this cookie with the teeny tiny hole, icing would probably come out the top. So I actually want to cut my hole just a little bit bigger, just a touch, because remember, this icing is still really, really loose, so it shouldn't need much more cutting. But right now I'm going to squeeze a bit harder on my tape because I really don't want icing to come out the top, and I'm just kind of twisting the bag. Instead of lifting like we were doing when we were outlining, I'm going to almost touch my cookie. And I hold my bag pretty much straight up and down. And as I squeeze, I'm kind of pushing the icing up against the outline with the tip of my bag. So I'm squeezing and pushing and jiggling this icing around. I really don't want to leave any holes here. I don't want to have to come back with my scribe tool and spread icing around. So I'm just kind of really puffing this up, gently squeezing as I fill the cookie. So I'm going to do both sides, and we're going to let this crust for a few minutes before we fill in the center, and that's what's going to give this cookie that separation, the sections, that separation. So I'm jiggling, squeezing. Now the important thing too when you flood your cookie is to make sure icing isn't spilling over the edge. If it is, what you're going to do is you're going to take your scribe tool and wipe it off. However, if you wait too long, you go to wipe it off, it's going to crack your surface. You can also use your scribe tool to kind of move some icing around. You shouldn't have to do this too much. If you are having to spread it around a lot, you probably didn't add enough icing. But I just scooched a little icing over by kind of jiggling the surface of the icing with the tip of the scribe tool. So go ahead and just flood the pumpkins, and then I'm going to show you how to outline your next two designs. I'm going to now show you how to outline your ghost and your candle, and the reason I'm showing you both of these is because we need to outline all four of these cookies first before we cut our hole bigger, because we're using both the white and the turquoise here, and we need small holes for that white. Remember, when you're using your white, you're using the white that has one piece of tape. This bag here that has two pieces of tape, it's a little bit less icing. This is our thicker consistency that we're going to use later. So don't use this one. You're going to use the larger bag of white. So I'm just going to massage my white really, really well, and we'll start by outlining our ghost. With the pumpkin, remember we outlined the center of the pumpkin first. Well, with the ghost, I want you to outline the hat first. So here we go. So I start right here in this corner. I touch my tip, I lift. I'm going to outline the brim of the hat going into the cookie and around, and touch again. Okay. And then I'll outline, going as close to the edge as I can go. We're not done yet though, so once you've outlined the full hat, I'm gonna grab from this corner, slightly curve to the other side, and do that again. Then I'm gonna take my white, and we'll outline the rest of the cookie. Touch, lift. When I could do the bottom of the ghost, I am not putting my tip down at all. I'm doing kind of like the waves we were doing on our practice sheet at the bottom of the cookie, going all the way up. Now for the ghost, remember we started with the hat first. With the candle, we're gonna start with the little plate first. So I'm taking my teal, touching from this corner to this corner, and touch, and then outline the plate. Taking my white, I'm going to outline lift, touch, all the way around. Kind of dipped it a little bit there, touch, and then connect. So go ahead and outline all 4 of those cookies, and then I'm going to show you how to fill them in. So meet me back here when you're done. To fill it in, I'm going to actually cut my hole bigger for my white, quite a bit bigger. But listen, for this guy, for the pumpkin, remember we let the sections crust. But the one important thing here is we're doing a lot of black outlining for our detail with this. So I don't want there to be any creases. With the pumpkin, there's going to be a little bit of a crease because we let the sections crust. With these guys, I'm going to do a black outline on top, so I want the smoothest surface possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flood the entire cookie before moving on to my next cookie. So I'm not going to do the white here, and continue, and then later add the turquoise. I want you guys to do one full ghost or one full candle before moving on to your next. So I cut my white hole bigger, and just like we flooded the pumpkin, we're just going to almost touch our tip to the cookie. Squeeze. You do have to move pretty quickly when you're flooding because the icing will start to crust. And then the important thing is to check it when you're done. So if you'll notice here, I'm not going to leave any holes. I don't want to spread that icing around with my scribe tool much. Just really filling this in. This one may need a little bit more help smoothing out than the pumpkin did. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So once you're flooded, you're going to take your scribe tool, and you can give your ghost a little gentle stab and jiggle. A stab and jiggle, that's what I call it. And as long as you've added enough icing in there, it should smooth out. So you notice I have a little point right here. I'm just going to wipe off my scribe and just barely touch the surface, and it should smooth out. Again, checking for spillage. We're good here. Then I'm going to take my turquoise. I'm not going to cut my turquoise more because we need this to outline our coffin, but I'm just going to fill in right after the white. I'm going to fill in the turquoise. I'm going to fill in the orange. And then you'll notice that it'll be pretty smooth where the colors are meeting each other. That's our goal here. It might look a little bit more messy, but we're going to go over it in black, so it's really going to clean it up. Once you're done with both ghosts, you're going to move on to your candle. I want to make sure you watch this candle because I'm going to be showing you how to flood your little flame. So we're going to start with the white. And again, we're not going to wait for this white to crust before filling in the plate. We'll add the plate right away. With the flame, I am going to try to have it not touch the white. It's okay if it does, but I'll show you how I do that. So there's our white, and then I'll get my turquoise or teal. Here all the way, really puffy, puff up that turquoise Sometimes I like to insert my tip and kind of just jiggle really quickly with my tip instead of even using a scribe tool. So here comes the flame, so I want to make sure you're watching that. I'm going to start with my yellow. So I'm kind of in the center of where the flame is, and I'm going to just create, I'm almost dragging my tip here, kind of mimicking the shape of this cutter right here, and I'll fill it in right away. Fill this in right away, and then right after, immediately after, I'm going to take my orange and then outline the orange and fill that one in right away. It's going to look a little funky for a little while, but once we add the black, it's going to look so awesome. So that is how you flood your next two designs. So go ahead and do that and then meet me back here. Once those are flooded, if you have a fan, like a table fan, that would be a great time to set your cookies in front of that table fan. And now I'm going to go ahead and go back to my pumpkin and finish flooding this guy. And because we allowed those sections to crust, it just adds that little oomph that we want on our cookie. If I didn't let that dry, we would have an orange instead of a pumpkin, right? This is the first year that my kids are not dressing up for Halloween. So it's a weird time for me, you guys. I have 3 boys. So right away we're going to do the stem and the leaves as well. But my oldest is 19 and my youngest, he's 15. He's a freshman, and they're just, I think they're too cool now, you know? But yes. Here we go. So that is completely flooded. Go ahead and set that in front of a fan. Otherwise, you're going to want to wait a little while to let that crust. And I'm going to show you how to do your coffin. To outline this coffin, before you do this, make sure your pumpkin is fully flooded, as well as your candles and your ghost. So do not start this cookie until all of those are outlined. Flooded rather. You're going to use your edible marker if you would like. I'm going to show you how to avoid using that if you want to. It's going to be really hard for you to see on the screen the outline that I make with the marker. However, you'll be able to see it on your own cookie. If you don't want to use the marker, this is how you're going to do it. So I'm going to take my yellow, and I'm just kind of eyeballing about a 1/2 inch, 1/4 to a 1/2 inch border around this cookie. What I'm doing is I'm taking my yellow and I'm going to create my first line going across the bottom, leaving that about a 1/2 inch border, and then I'll do the same up here. So let's see, about a 1/2 inch around and touch. Then I'm going to look at this little corner here, and that's my goal. I want to hit right there. So I'm going to go up the cookie, leaving that border, and then touching right where that corner is next to there, and then connect. Same thing here, lift, touch, and lift. All right, so once you've done that, you can take this little piece. I'm going to take my turquoise and outline the rest. So this is really, you're going to be doing this a lot with the black, where you're lifting and you're touching. Lifting and touching. So make sure that you have that motion down, or practice it, because we are going to be doing that later with our black. And that today is the challenge of our class, really, is our black detail. So I'm going all the way around the cookie. Once the outline has crusted, you can cut your turquoise and your yellow holes bigger, and you're going to go ahead and fill those in. I like to start with the turquoise first, but I'm just going to make it nice and puffy. Puffy, puffy. All the way around. And then I'm gonna cut my yellow hole bigger. Ooh, I left a big spot here, so I'm just squeezing and jiggling my tip in there to really clean this side up. And then right away, again, we're not gonna let this crust because we want a really flat layer of icing when we do our black. I'm gonna take my yellow and just fill in the rest. Jiggle, jiggle. Okay, so at this point, you're gonna put them all in front of a fan or wait like 5 minutes before doing what I'm gonna show you. Actually, you can practice your black while you are letting these all crust. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. So put your cookies in front of a fan or set them aside for about 5 minutes. While you're letting those crust, you can practice this practice sheet here. While you are letting that icing crust on your 8 cookies, we are going to practice with our black icing. I want to make sure that you have a good handle on this black icing because this can either make or break your cookie, okay? So I'm going to cut a small hole. The thing with the black is you don't want the hole too tiny because you don't want any curling happening. So it's going to be slightly a bigger hole than what you practice with, like just a smidge bigger than what you practiced with. But go ahead and practice these sheets for the little wavies I did here. This is kind of mimicking the candle dripping. What I'm doing is I touch my tip, squeeze, lift, and then look a little bit ahead of where you want that icing to fall. So this is a good size. You want to make sure as you're doing this, the icing's not curling. If it, this is a little bit of a smaller space than what you're going to do on your candle. So if the curves are kind of touching each other, that's okay. You just want to make sure that you're getting nice clean lines throughout. And then with the skull, what I'm showing you here is at the corner, that's where you're going to start. So I touch my tip here, and I want you to get this motion of, here's the circle that we're doing, and we're going to touch our tip to the other side. Okay, once you've done that, you're going to almost drag your tip on the paper to create that little more rectangular shape. So you're going to practice all of those. You can even like go on a paper towel and get some more practice without tracing. For the stars, what you're going to do is you're going to take your orange and you're going to do a little dot in the middle of the star. You'll take your scribe tool, make sure there's no crusties on here, but what I'm doing is I'm holding it like a pencil and I'm just sort of dragging the icing. And then when I get to the points, that's where my tip, the tip of my scribe touches. So you are going to gently touch your cookie as you finish the star. So go ahead and just practice all of those while your other cookies are drying. Once they have crusted, you can kind of tell when it's crusted by the shine of the cookie. So if it's like super, super shiny, that means it's still wet. But once it kind of has, I don't know how to describe it, more like a matte, but it's not quite matte, it's still going to be shiny. But I would say about 5 minutes after you flooded everything, you could probably start your details. So meet me back here when you're done. So I'm going to show you how to finish these cookies each one by one. Obviously you can pause or fast forward at any time, but we're going to start with our pumpkin first. So I'm going to get out one of my extra bags and get my tip out. So here's my extra bag, here's my piping tip. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, but I'm going to place the tip inside of this bag and push it all the way to the bottom. Now I want the tip of this to not be in the bag. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the tip up just slightly, okay, and cut straight across. Now I can push that tip down, and if you see there's a little bit of metal showing and then the plastic, that's about how much you want on there. Then I'm going to open this bag up. The white icing that has the double tape, you're going to cut a really big hole out of that. and you're going to squeeze that icing in this bag. So the way that I squeeze the icing, being careful not to push it in the tip yet, but I'm holding the tail of the old bag and the outside of this bag and then pulling out the old bag. So now look, I have my icing in here, my tip is all the way to the end. Whoop, make sure that the tip doesn't go up the bag. And then I'm going to gently just kind of push the icing down, but not all the way through the tip, just so that tip is sturdy. And then what I'm going to do is just twist this. You can even tie it in a knot, but I'm just going to twist it. And here we go. I like to have the photo of the cookies in front of me as kind of a guide for where I want to do this. You can practice a few little movements on a piece of paper towel before starting this, but the way that I do this is I like to have my paper towel close by. I like to have this, if I'm not using it right away, just in a damp paper towel, just so that the tip doesn't dry up. But I'm going to gently touch my tip on the side of the cookie, squeezing a bit harder than I normally would, and going straight across, and then release the pressure and touch. Okay, we'll do that again. You can wipe off your tip, squeeze, lift like we do when we practiced, release the pressure, touch. I touch the side of the cookie gently. But you definitely want to do a few practice lines so that you get the feel of the consistency of the icing so that line isn't breaking mid-cookie. Right here, I'm going to touch, squeeze, lift, and then touch, release, then touch. And then last one right here, touch, lift, release the pressure, and touch. So this is with that new white. You can come back with your scribe and kind of clean up the sides if you need to. Oh wait, there's one more line we're missing. We're missing one right here. This one goes kind of at an angle. And touch. I just want to leave space for the eyes. To add the eyes, what I'm going to do is first I'm going to just do the tiniest little dot. This will help guide me, like if I went a little too far down or up or right or left, I have wiggle room here. So I can, as I add my bigger eye on top, I can kind of scooch it over if I need to, but this looks good to me. So because the icing is still really wet, you just want to be gentle with this, but I'm going to just barely touch the surface, and then I squeeze, leaving my tip where it's at until I get the size eye that I want. Release the pressure, then lift. If I don't release the pressure, what's going to happen is I'm going to have a pointy eye. So squeeze, leaving the tip close to the cookie, release the pressure, then lift. Now I'm going to take my yellow, and because the yellow is such a loose consistency, you want to kind of do it a little bit of a distance from the eye so that it doesn't run into the eye. But I did leave a little bit of a space there. And lastly, to finish our pumpkin, I'm just going to outline the stem by lifting, touching, lift, touch, and then I kind of curve right here, almost dragging my tip on the cookie. Lift, touch, lift, touch, and go into the leaf. And then last one, lift, touch, lift, touch, and curve. So that is our first completed cookie. Now I'm going to show you, you can either pause this or you can watch me finish all of these and then go through yours. It's up to you what you want to do. But I'm going to show you how to finish each one of these. So now we are at the ghost. Just like when we outline the hat first, we're going to outline it again first, and we're going to outline it completely. So I'm lifting right in between the turquoise and the white, touch, lift, I'm still lifting, now I'm touching, and then touch. Then I'm going to go right between the teal and the orange. So make sure you've done a lot of practice lines with your black. There's no going back. All right, now I'm going to outline the body of the ghost just by lifting. And I lift this whole time, just like when we outlined and kind of just doing these little waves. And then I'm going to add the eyes. So to do that again, I'm going to just gently add the little white, the little tiny dots. And now my tip is straight up and down. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Release the pressure, lift. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Release the pressure, then lift. To create the mouth, I'm almost dragging my tip on the cookie as I just do a simple little U shape. And then lastly, again, leaving the space, not going too close to the eyes, adding those little cheeks. So there's our second finished cookie. Next up is going to be our candle. You want to work on the coffin last because that one is the most wet since we flooded that one last. So firstly, I'm going to outline the flame, lifting, touch all the way around, and then outlining the yellow. I'm almost dragging my tip on the cookie, okay? Then I'm going to outline the plate, touch. I love how this black outline just kind of like makes them look a little bit cartoony of a set. Okay, here's the challenge part, is going to be our little wave. So I'm going to start with my tip right here, lifting, and I want to make sure that I'm leaving space inside of this cookie for the detail I'm doing inside for the wick. So there's our little waves. I'm going to take my little line from the flame into the cookie, and then these little waves, I'm almost dragging my tip on there all the way across. Not all the way across, but last cookie is going to be our coffin. I love this little candle. Oh, we're not done with the candle. Sorry guys. We need a little line on the sides. Almost forgot. That will complete your scary candle. And here we go with the coffin. Now, with the coffin, the only thing you need to remember is to apply the skull first before doing any of the black lines. Now, you can also do a ghost. I'll show you that version next, but I'm going to start with the skull. So just like with our practice, I'm imagining where that corner of the circle is. So I'm right here. I lift. Here's my circle. And then inside, and now right here I'm almost dragging my tip, creating that little rectangular shape, right? I want that to crust for a minute before filling it in. So while that's crusting, now I can outline the rest. So I'm lifting and touching at every corner or every point. Lift and touch all the way around. And like this one cleans up this cookie the most, I think. And then I'll do the yellow outline. But do you see why we added the skull first? Because I don't really want that outline to be under the skull. Lift and touch, touch, and touch. Now I can add my white icing in here. The important thing about this is I am not overfilling it. I want that black outline to show. So I'm just doing a tiny bit in here, just enough for that to smooth over, but not a ton, okay? So I'm just carefully filling that in as to not cover that black outline that I made. Right away I'm going to add the eyes, so I almost touch my tip to the white and I squeeze, creating my little eyes. To do the nose, I do kind of like an upside down V. And then lastly for the mouth, I'm going to lift and curve and two little lines. See how cool that is? It looks so cool. All right. Now I'm going to add my edible bats. This is made with rice paper. You have 6 bats here, but you only need 4 for your cookies. So you can actually add 3 per coffin if you want, or however you want to do it. But instead of gluing these on flat, I kind of curve the wings so that there's a little bit more dimension to the cookie. So now I'm going to take a teeniest amount of black, make a little dot right there, and stick that bat right on there. And you can use your scribe to just gently set it. You don't want to push it in the icing, but I'm just gently setting it. Folding my wing, adding a tiny little dot, placing it on, taking my scribe, just securing it. And then lastly, the little stars. I'm going to add my little dot. A little dot here. If you're fast enough, you can do them all at once. And this, of course, is optional, but I'm just dragging. When I get to the points, I'm pretty much touching the cookie, but very gently, because remember, the icing is still really wet. So just be extra, extra gentle. And you can always take longer to let these crust before doing the details too. That's the beauty of doing these classes at home, is you really can take your time. And real quick, I want to show you how to do the ghost so that you guys can see that. If you want to do something else, you can also like write our rest in peace on here, which I'll show you. But for the ghost, I'm just going to start right here in the cookie, lift up, kind of create a teardrop shape a little bit. There. And I'll show you what that looks like filled in. So if the skull is intimidating to you, you can definitely do something like this. But be creative. I have had so many people do like spider webs on their coffin, and yeah, just a whole skeleton on their coffin, which is pretty cool. But you could do that, right? And you can write rest in peace. If you want to do any writing on here, I just almost drag my tip on the cookie. But feel free to be creative. All right. So these are your final cookies. I don't know which one. I think the pumpkin is actually my favorite of the set, but you tell me, what's your favorite? And thank you so much for joining in class. I hope you're enjoying the classes, and I just truly appreciate the support. Next month I'm hoping to be a kind of a fall Gilmore Girls theme, and then last of the year is going to be Christmas, so stay tuned for all of that. Thanks. See you guys later.